Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to ask me questions or am I just supposed to speak?
רק תתחיל בינתיים לספר איך קוראים לך, איפה אתה גר, מה אתה עושה בחיים.
Okay. First of all, it feels very strange for me to be speaking in English with Revital present because our whole relationship is in Hebrew. I wouldn't even know how to be able to interact with her in English. That's how good she was as a teacher, and how comfortable she made me feel using my Hebrew on a daily basis. And she was really certain to make sure that I stayed in Hebrew and would ask me questions when I didn't understand something in Hebrew, would explain to me in Hebrew, to the point where I actually understood what she was talking about all the time. My name is Gary Wexler. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a former professor at the University of Southern California, USC, Annenberg School of Communication. I worked in the advertising business. I did the advertising for Apple Computer and Coca-Cola. And then I spent many years working in the nonprofit world, working with nonprofits on their communication issues. And I have a familiarity with Israel because so many of my clients were Israeli, to the point that the National Library of Israel has established the Gary Wexler archive of all of the work in the advertising that I had done for a 20-year period. This is all to say that I'm a serious student and a credible human being. This experience, and I've had other Hebrew teachers in Israel and some serious Ulpan engagements, but nothing was like this experience. The fact that she combined her knowledge of teaching Hebrew with her knowledge as a trained and certified guide, and took me to incredible places within Israel, but did all the touring in Hebrew. So not only did I learn the Hebrew, but I learned about places that even I had been before, but I learned them at a completely different level of depth that I had ever learned before. Like one of the experiences was when she took me to Ir David, and she started picking up or started showing me old coins and vessels and everything. Her excitement over the fact that these coins were evidence of Jewish history within this land and the connection that it made was so extraordinary and also so emotional and moved me at the same time, which is also something else. Revital brought Israeli culture alive for me. She took us also to Pardes Chana to see what was going on there with a liberal spiritual community and what was happening. But she brought Israel alive in a way that you don't have in an Ulpan because of the touring, but also because of her personality and her warmth and her adaptability to the people that she's working with. And she would do something extraordinary too. Each lesson, each day, she would ask a question for a conversation, but it wasn't like a question like, how are you feeling today? It was more a question of depth of what is your reaction to this serious thing that is happening? So she's like pulling out your thinking, your brain, your depth, and you're having a Hebrew conversation of depth that's going on, and you're hearing yourself say things in Hebrew that you didn't know you were capable of doing. And I want to say something else to encourage anybody. I just turned 71 years old and I can do this. You can do this. People can do this. I remember when I was younger how much easier it was for me. So it's, your brain adapts. And so we did this over a 3-week period. And at the beginning, it would take me with new words like several minutes with each word, turning it over and over and over again. By the 3rd week, it was like zip, zip, zip. And my brain just adapted. And yours will too. And so I can't say enough how extraordinary this experience is. Now she's telling me she's going off to Peru. So it's not like I'm going to have her here until she gets back. Okay, so I'll miss her while she's gone because we created also an incredible relationship. Oh, here's the other thing about her. Revital loves food. As much of a naturalist as she is, she's not a vegetarian or a vegan. This woman eats everything, and she eats a lot. It's shocking. And so she would take me to all these restaurants and all this food and introduce me to all this stuff. And on top of it, she's a salsa dancer, but she wouldn't dance for me. Anyway, I can't say enough about how extraordinary this experience was. Thank you, Revital. תודה רבה לך.
וואו, גרי, תודה, 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 תודה. ממש, ממש תודה רבה. טוב, בא לי רק לשאול אותך, אם יש, איך הייתה החוויה שלך עם המשתתפות האחרות, עם דבי?
עם דבי, היה בסדר, אז אנחנו...
In English, if you can say, like, how was the experience with the other students?
Oh, okay. So,
if you first... feel, like, if you feel okay to answer this question, of course, like, if you
sure,
feel like
sure.
it's...
Yeah, our first week in Tel Aviv, it was not just me and Revital, it was me and Revital and this woman, Debbie, from the East Coast. I live in California, as if you couldn't tell by my shirt and everything. Anyway, it was great. She and I didn't know each other, and we got along really well and really enjoyed it. And it was also, I think, a learning experience for me to see what her questions were to Revital and the things she didn't understand that then I learned from. And I think the things that I didn't understand that she learned from. And Revital handled, it very well as us as a group. So it was a real positive experience doing this with someone else, and hearing her and allowing her to express her experience in Hebrew and her questions. We learned really well together. And then we got to know each other one day. Revital brought us up to Binyamina. We took the train. And so she and I sat together on the train for 40 minutes. It was without Revital. And we got to really talk and know each other. It was a pleasure.
In Hebrew.
In Hebrew. In Hebrew. Yes, Revital only let us talk in Hebrew with each other. So that was really good as well. Oh, let me also say something else to you. If you want to be able to manage your weight, this is a really good program because she's got you walking and walking and walking and walking. So she should really kind of promote this as a weight loss program as well.
מעולה, מעולה, גרי. And last question, is there anything that you can do today that you couldn't do before the program? Like, did you feel any change in your, what you can do in Hebrew?
Will your question be in there, or should I repeat the question?
It's better if you repeat the question.
Okay. So Revital just asked me if there's anything that changed in me from this as a result of this experience. A huge amount that I'm going to talk about. And then you can edit this, Revital, as to how it will go. First of all, you learn what your brain is capable of. You think that you can't do certain things, and it just gets more and more and more flexible as time goes on. So that's another reason she should market this thing to older people as to what it can do to really make your brain flexible and be able to increase your brain capacity. So that was one thing. The other thing was as much as I've been to Israel 60 times because of my work. But this was an extraordinary experience because I got to learn it in a different way. I got to learn it through the eyes of a young Israeli woman, and how she was seeing her country and how she was expressing it and things that she thought were important in ways that I had never experienced before in all the times that I had been in Israel. So that was a really unexpected experience for me. There was also something else for me. It took me a couple weeks to feel my attachment to Israel again, and I didn't understand why. And I realized post-pandemic, not that we're out of the pandemic, but it's not like it was, we have been so closed in on a daily basis. There has been a shield between us and the world. And the first couple of weeks I was there, I kept thinking to myself, well, maybe I'm older now and I don't feel the attachment in quite the same way. But by the third week with Revital, I started to feel it literally in the atoms of my body, that I could feel this attachment. And I realized how important it was to get out of our pandemic lifestyle and to go back so that we could discover our souls again and our feeling, and then the extraordinary excitement of discovering it in Hebrew and be doing it in Hebrew. There's one last thing I really want to say here, really important. You cannot understand a culture without speaking the language. It is, we think we understand and know all these things about Israel, but until you're speaking the language and you hear how the language is suffused with all these Talmudic and Jewish references, you don't understand the Judaism of Israel, which we in the diaspora love to say, well, you know, they're not as Jewish as we are in America. They are in a completely different way. And a lot of it comes right through the language, in the way they speak and the references that they do. Plus the other thing, I was able to listen to the television and listen to the governmental debates and hear the Jewish questions which were coming up in all this, because I now have the language to understand it. Not that I understood everything, but I understood the gist. And you just recognize the Jewish identity of Israel in a completely different way than we as diaspora Jews experience and expect it. And it opened my mind in a huge way that it wasn't before.
מדהים, מדהים. ואז מיקוד לשאלה האחרונה, שהאם יש משהו ברמה של העברית שלך, שאתה מרגיש שהיום יותר קל לך לעשות בעברית, מלפני התוכנית?
Okay, so let me explain also something else about the loosening up of my Hebrew. So the first week, Revital will have you read in Hebrew a story or an explanation as to where she's taking you. So the first week, as well as I spoke Hebrew, the reading was really difficult. I mean, it wasn't a siddur, so it wasn't like words I had memorized. And it took me time, and it was a struggle to read it. And by the third week, it just started flowing, and I didn't even realize what was happening, how it just enters into your brain through this experience with her that really improves your reading ability, your understanding ability, and the flow that begins to happen. And also, as I said, the quicker ability to learn the language more and more and more as time was going on. I mean, I met with Israeli friends of mine and had dinners with them, and they were all saying, we can't believe the improvement in your Hebrew just from when you were here, just from the beginning 3 weeks ago to what it is now. Because there was so much Hebrew going on, and because I surrounded myself with it, the level of it and the best I can say is the loosening up of it, of the pronunciation, the language, the reading, the hearing, the understanding, the interactions were just, you know, were just vastly improved. I mean, I didn't even have to think when I got on the Rakevet Kala, the light train in Jerusalem, or the trains all over the country, or went into the stores or restaurants. And it wasn't like I had to even think in English. The Hebrew just flowed out of me at that point because we were speaking all the time, and it just loosened up everything.
Woohoo!
Okay.
מדהים, מדהים. גרי, תודה, 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 תודה. באמת, ממש.
Okay.
ממש
I
תודה
want to see
רבה.
אני רוצה לראות את מה איך אומרים, to edit, אני למדתי את המילה, לתעד is to copy, איך אומרים to...
להעתיק?
להעתיק is to edit, נכון?
לא, זה לערוך.
לערוך, אחרי שאת מערכת?
שאת תערכי?
שאת תערכי, את זה אני רוצה לראות את הסרט, אוקיי?
בטח, בשמחה, בטח. אני עדיין לא יודעת איפה אני אשתמש בזה בדיוק, אם זה יהיה... כן. כרגע אני אוספת, ואז אני אבין מה אני עושה.
בסדר, אוקיי.
גרי, המון 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 תודות, באמת. ואם מסתדר לך, אם באמת יש לך את כמה חברים שהיית רוצה אולי, שאפשר אולי לעשות איתם זום ביחד, אני סופר סופר אשמח לעשות ככה, לנצל את הזמן באוגוסט שמתפנה, ואולי אפשר לעשות עם חברים ביחד, זה יכול להיות ממש כיף.
אוקיי, בסדר.
בסדר? וגם שתדע, רגע, אני עוצרת פה את